those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, because they shall be filled. Blessed are the compassionate, because they shall obtain compassion. Blessed are the clean in heart, because they shall see Elohim. Blessed are the peacemakers, because they shall be called sons of Elohim. Blessed are those persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the reign of the heavens. Blessed are you when Blessed are you when they reproach and persecute you and falsely say every wicked word against you for my sake. Rejoice and be glad, because your reward is in the heavens is great. For in this way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt becomes tasteless, how shall it be seasoned? For it is no longer of any use, but to be thrown out and to be trodden down by men. You are the light of the world. It is impossible for a city to be hidden on a mountain. Nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it shines to all those in the house. Let your light so shine before men, so that they see your good works and praise your Father who is in the heavens. Do not think that I came to destroy the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to complete. For truly I say to you, till the heaven and the earth pass away, one yod or one tittle shall by no means pass from the Torah till all be done. Whoever then breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches men so shall be called least in the reign of the heavens. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the reign of the heavens. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall by no means enter into the reigns of the heavens. You heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder. And whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that whoever is wroth with his brother without a cause shall be liable to judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Rakah, shall be liable to the Sanhedrin. But whoever says, you fool, shall be liable to the fire of Gehenna. Keep going. Oh, 26? Okay. If then you bring your gift to the slaughter place, and there remember that your brother holds whatever against you, leave your gift there before the slaughter place, and go first, make peace with your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Be well-minded with your opponent, promptly, while you are on the way with him, lest your opponent deliver you to the judge, and the judge to the officer, and you be thrown into prison. Truly I say to you, you shall by no means get out of there till you have paid the last penny.
Amen. Amen.
I need somebody help.
Yep, they're going to help you. There we go. Excellent. Excellent. Amen. Thank you, Candace. All right, next up we have Adrian. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Adrian, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay. Wait, Adrian's going to take us from verse 27 to the end of chapter 5.
You heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone looking at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And if your right eye causes you to stumble, pluck it out and throw it away from you. For it is better for you that one of your members perish than for your entire body to be thrown into Gehenna. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away from you. For it is better for you that one of your members perish than for your entire body to be thrown into Gehenna. And it has been said, whoever puts away his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that whoever puts away his wife, except for the matter of whoring, makes her commit adultery. And whoever marries a woman who has been put away commits adultery. Again, you heard that it was said of those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths to Yahweh. But I say to you, do not swear vainly at all, neither by the heavens, because it is Elohim's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great sovereign. Nor swear by your head, because you are not able to make one hair white or black. But let your word be yes, and your no be no. And what goes out beyond these is from the wicked one. You heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the wicked. But whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other one to him also. And he who wishes to sue you and take away your inner garment, let him have your outer garment as well. And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him who asks of you. From him who wishes to borrow from you, do not turn away. You've heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies. Bless those cursing you. Do good to those hating you, and pray for those insulting you and persecuting you, so that you become sons of your Father in the heavens. Because he makes his sun rise on the wicked and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. For if you love those loving you, what reward have you? Are the tax collectors not doing the same too? And if you greet your brothers only, what have you done more than others? Are the tax collectors not doing so too? Therefore, be perfect, as your Father in the heavens is perfect.
Amen. Okay, thank you, Adrian. Okay, Manny. Going to take us into chapter 6. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Manny who's come with honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to read the first 18 verses here in chapter 6.
No matter how much I do this, it's always nerve-wracking. But just mentioning on that, just going deeper, how people want to go deeper. I can't even do chapter 5, and people want to go deeper into the word. Be aware of doing your kind deeds before men in order to be seen by them. Otherwise, you have no reward from your Father in the heavens. Thus, when you do a kind deed, do not sound a trumpet before you as the hypocrites do, in the congregations and in the streets, to be praised by men. Truly, I say to you, they have the reward. But when you do a kind deed, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your kind deed shall be in secret. And your Father who sees in secret shall himself reward you openly. And when you pray, you shall not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the congregations and on the corners of the streets to be seen by men. Truly I say to you, they have the reward. But you, when you pray, go into your room, and having shut your door, pray to your Father who is in the secret place, and your Father who sees in secret shall reward you openly. And when praying, do not keep on babbling like the nations, for they think they shall be heard for their many words. Therefore do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. This then is the way you should pray. Our Father who is in heaven, let your name be set apart. Let your reign come. Let your desire be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And do not lead us into trial, but deliver us from the wicked one, because yours is the reign and the power and the esteem forever. Amen. For if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father shall also forgive you. But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither shall your Father forgive your trespasses. And when you fast, do not be sad-faced like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces so that they appear to be fasting to men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward. But you, when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, so that you do not appear to men to be fasting, but to your Father who is in the secret place, and your Father who sees secret shall reward you openly.
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you, Manny. Okay, back up there. All right. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Amy, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Amy's going to take us now from verse 19 to the end of chapter 6. And I've got 4 more readings. We're all good. Okay, we got enough readers over here.
Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart shall be also. The lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, all your body shall be enlightened. But if your eye is evil, all your body shall be darkened. If then the light that is within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one is able to serve 2 masters, for either he shall hate the one and love the other, or else he shall cleave to the one and despise the other. You are not able to serve Elohim and Mammon. Because of this I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you shall eat or drink, or about your body, or what you shall put on. Is not life more than the food, and the body more than the clothing? Look at the birds of the heaven, for they neither sow nor reap, nor gather into storehouses, yet your heavenly Father does feed them. Are you not worth more than they? And which of you by worrying is able to add 1 cubit to his life's span? So why do you worry about clothing? Note well the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. And I say to you that even Shlomo in all his esteem was not dressed like one of these. But if Elohim so clothes the grass of the field, which exists today, and tomorrow is thrown in the furnace, how much more you, O you of little belief? Do not worry then, saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? Or what shall we wear? For these all the nations seek for, and your heavenly Father knows that you need all these. But seek first the reign of Elohim and his righteousness, and all these shall be added to you. Do not then worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow shall have its own worries. Each day has enough evil of itself.
Amen. Amen. Okay, Owen, right? He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Owen, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Owen's going to now read chapter 7, verses 1 through 14.
Do not judge, lest you be judged. For with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged. And with the same measure you use, it shall be measured to you. And why do you look at the splinter in your brother's eyes, but do not notice the plank in your own eye? Or how is it that you say to your brother, let me remove the splinter out of your eye, and see a plank is in your own eye? Hypocrite, first remove the plank from your own eye, and then you shall see clearly and remove the splinter out of your brother's eye. Do not give what is set apart to the dogs, nor throw your pearls before the pigs, lest they trample them under their feet and turn and tear you in pieces. Ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it shall be opened. Or is there a man among you who, if his son asks for bread, shall give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, shall he give him a snake? If you then, being wicked, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more shall your Father who is in the heavens give what is good to those who ask him? Therefore, whatever you wish men to do to you, do also to them, for this is the Torah and the prophets. Enter into the narrow gate, because the gate is wide, and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. Because the gate is narrow, and the way is hard-pressed, which leads to life, and there are few who find it.
Okay, so, all right, so, okay, amen. Okay, thank you, okay.
Thank you, Rabbi. He's a mighty man even though he's this short, okay? Mighty man of Elohim.
All right. By the way, this is why years ago we used to have the mic stand and everything. We had to pull it up and pull it down, and pull it up and pull it down. So we just go with the handheld now. All right. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Tommy, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, take us now from verse 15 to the end of the chapter.
But beware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are savage wolves. By their fruits you shall know them. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes? Are figs from thistles? So every good tree yields good fruit, but a rotten tree yields wicked fruit. A good tree is unable to yield wicked fruit, and a rotten tree to yield good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So then, by their fruits you shall know them. Not everyone who says to me, Master, Master, shall enter into the reign of the heavens, but he who is doing the desire of my Father in the heavens. Many shall say to me in that day, Master, Master, have we not prophesied in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and done many mighty works in your name? And then I shall declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who work lawlessness. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and does them shall be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain came down, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them shall be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain came down, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and they beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. And it came to be, when Yeshua had ended these words, that the people were astonished at his teaching, for he was teaching them as one possessing authority, and not as the scribes.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Tommy. Excuse me. All right. Olivier. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Olivier, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Olivier is going to take us now to chapter 8 and read the first 18 verses.
Thank you. And when he came down from the mountain, large crowds followed him. And see, a leper came and bowed before him, saying, Master, if you desire, you are able to make me clean. And stretching out his hand, Yeshua touched him, saying, I desire it. Be cleansed. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Yeshua said to him, See, mention it to no one. But go your way, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moshe commanded, as a witness to them. And when Yeshua had entered Kephar Nahum, the captain came to him, appealing to him, saying, Master, my servant is lying in the house paralyzed, grievously tortured. And Yeshua said to him, I shall come and heal him. And the captain answering said, Master, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof, but only say a word, and my servant shall be healed. For I too am a man under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to this one, Go, and he goes, and to another, Come, and he comes, and to my servant, Do this, and he does it. And when Yeshua heard, he marveled, and said to those who followed, Truly, I say to you, not even in Israel I have found such great belief. And I say to you that many shall come from east to west and sit down with Abraham and Chag and Yaakov in the reign of the heavens. But the son of the reign shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And Yeshua said to the captain, Go, as you have believed, so let it be done for you. And his servant was healed that hour. And when Yeshua had come into the house of Kepha, he saw his wife's mother lying sick with inflammation. And he took her hand, and the inflammation left her, and she arose and served them. And when evening had come, they brought him many who were demon-possessed. And he cast out the spirits with a word and healed all who were sick. And it might be filled that was spoken by Yeshayahu the prophet, saying, He himself took our weaknesses and bore our sicknesses. And when Yeshua saw large crowds about him, he gave a command to go off to the other side.
Amen. Amen. There we go. Am I on the mic here? Doesn't have to be on yet, because I'll use this one for right now. Hello, test. I'll use this one in the meantime. He who blessed our fathers, I'm sorry, what was your name again? Tom. Okay. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Tom, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Tom's going to take us from verse 19 of chapter 8 to the end of the chapter, and that will be our last reader.
And a certain scribe, having come near, said to him, Teacher, I shall follow you wherever you go. And Yeshua said to him, The foxes have holes, and the birds of the shamayim nests, but the bin of Adam has nowhere to lay his head. And another of his talmidim said to him, Adonai, first let me go and bury my father. But Yeshua said to him, Follow me, and leave the dead to bury their own dead. And when he entered into a boat, his talmidim followed him. And see, a great gale arose on the sea, so that the boat was covered by the waves. But he was sleeping. And his talmidim came to him and woke him up, saying, Adonai, save us, we are perishing. And he said to them, Why are you afraid, O ye of little belief? Then having risen, he rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. And the men marveled, saying, What is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him? And when he came to the other side, to the country of the Girgashites, 2 demon-possessed ones met him, coming out of the tombs very fierce, so that no one was able to pass that way. And see, they cried out, saying, What have we to do with you, Yeshua, ben of Elohim? Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time? And at a distance from them there was a herd of many pigs feeding, and the demons begged him, saying, If you cast us out, send us into the herd of pigs. And he said to them, Go. And they, coming out, went into the herd of pigs. And see, the entire herd of pigs rushed into the steep place into the sea, and died in the water. And the herdsmen fled and went away into the city and reported all this, and about those possessed by the demons. And see, all the city came out to meet Yeshua. And when they saw him, they begged him to leave their borders.
Amen. Amen. Okay, that's better. Sound check. All right, we can hear. Good. Okay, so I have my, who's going to go around? Dale and Steve? Let's get these mics up there. Again, there's one over there. Oops. All right, so. Amen, amen, amen. Thank you all to you readers. You did a great job. Appreciate it. Excellent job by the readers. Okay, now what I forgot to tell you was that if you read, you are now required to answer all questions about your section. Did I forget to mention that? You know me, I'm always serious about everything. Okay. Now, oh look, the sound keeps changing on my mic. I like that. Okay, so I want to just mention a couple of things real quickly before we go into the Midrashic part of this. Okay, so just a reminder, since some people did walk in here a little bit later once we got started, that there have been some changes to the schedule. Okay, everything on Friday is now Tuesday, Tuesday is now Monday, Monday is now Sunday, and just forget the whole thing. Just show up somewhere and something will be happening. Okay, no, let me tell you what we're changing. Okay, so we're making one simple change. The afternoon activity that would start around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3:30, scheduled for today is now for tomorrow, which is the mikvah, and the foot washing, we'll do that tomorrow. And my class that was for tomorrow afternoon will be today, okay? And that's because it will be 20 degrees warmer, and I think all who are involved will appreciate going in the water and watching those go in the water when it is in the 70s and not in the 50s. Okay, so we'll be doing that tomorrow. Okay, so today, after lunch, which starts at 12:30, so we have a little bit of time here now to go a good hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes to go through this discussion. After lunch, then we will have teaching by Rabbi Tom, the Bikurim teaching, as well as the Up to the Challenge teaching by me after that. Okay, now, for those of you, again, I'm just to announce this, I'll say it one more time at the very end in case anybody missed it, who have not taken the color code test, and for those of you online wondering what's all going on, I have a program called Up to the Challenge, and really the idea is getting to know yourself better so that you can understand others better. And so you can be more successful in the loving each other part. The Torah teachings are about loving him as much as, loving each other, but it's really more about loving him and doing what he wants. But sometimes we don't understand each other, and that's why we have all this conflict. And mostly I think it's because you don't understand yourself, okay? And so the personality tests that are out there are fairly helpful in that range. I found this one very simple. It's called the color test, the color code, red, yellow, white, and blue. Anyway, so I've got a copy of it on the table over here for those of you that have not taken the test. So please only take the copies if you've not taken the test. If we run out of copies, I can print more. So just if you happen to get over there and one of the piles doesn't have enough in it, I'm not sure if I made enough of each one, just come and see me. I'll print you one out. Now, there's 5 pages. There's 45 questions. So look at your papers to make sure your questions go all the way from 1 through 45. One page goes to 18, the next one 19 to like 30, then 31 to whatever. Each page kind of goes through. The last page has 5 sets of dashed lines on it. 2 sets of 5 lines, little dashed lines on the bottom of the page. The top set of dashed lines is where you will put, starting in the left, all the A's you got, how many? Count them up. All the B's, count them up. C's and D's, count them up. Then when we get together in the afternoon, I'll explain to you what to do after that, okay? So you need to tabulate. Now add up your numbers to make sure they add up to 45 questions. So if you put down your A's, B's, C's, and D's and add them up and come up with 43, you missed a few. Not that you didn't answer them, you just missed them when you were counting them, okay? So That's what you're going to do. There's two sets of lines. The bottom line underneath that, the row of the lines under that will be for your percentages. Okay, and if you want to do the math yourself, just take whatever your number was on the top line, divide it, with 45 into a percentage, okay? And so then you'll understand, your percentage of each of those letters, and then I'll explain which letter is what colors and how that works when we see each other in the afternoon. Okay, that will save us a lot of time as we get into the afternoon and put more pressure on me for me to make up some stuff to tell you in the afternoon. Okay. All right, on second thought, we'll just do the test again this afternoon. No, kidding. All right, so the way this is going to work is this. We have a couple of ground rules that we use in all of our midrashes. And this is something that I came up with, or I believe the Rock inspired me with years and years and years ago, which is rule number one is that we are going to be respectful of everybody who says anything. Rule number two, if you have a comment about a verse, and what I mean by comment or an understanding of what you think the verse is trying to say or what it means, we first have to agree to what it actually says before you're allowed to tell me what you think it means. Is that fair? I'll give you an example where that came from. In Revelation 19, was it 19 or 20? Give me 1 second, I'll tell you where it was. 19, no, it's 20. Okay, in Revelation 20, when it talks about the white throne judgment, I had a lady one time when we did an open midrash get up there and say, well, I want to talk about the white throne judgment, the judgment of the damned. And I said, hold on, time out, it doesn't say that. Now, if you want to make a case for why that's what it's talking about, let's first agree to what it says or not. Because that's important. Because we have to be agreeing on what it says, and then we can disagree or discuss what we think it means. Is that fair? Are we all not tired enough of people teaching their speculation as fact? Okay? No problem speculating. You can read a verse that we read through in the first 8 chapters of Matthew, tell me what you think it means, or ask questions about it, but first let's agree to what it actually says before we discuss what it means. Because to understand what it means, we may have to go to other parts of the scripture to get context, okay? So just want to throw that out there, because even if I agree with your interpretation, I will be hardline on you first agreeing to what it does or doesn't say. So if I give you a little hard time, that doesn't mean I don't agree with you. It just means that let's make sure that we're telling everybody that this is the limitation of what it says before we then tell you and interpret what it means. Okay, so that's really important, and it's really fair for everyone. Okay, so the way this is going to work is this. This is not necessarily just me telling you everything you just read in 8 chapters. I'm here to moderate and fill in the gaps. It's really, I want this to be a discussion that you guys get to have. So somebody will raise their hand, they'll pose a question or comment, and then if you would like to jump in and kind of discuss that particular item, you can raise your hand and get involved in a back and forth type of thing. And then once we finish that particular item, we'll go on to the next question or comment. Is that good? Now, we'll only get so many in for 8 chapters in the next hour and a half, so we'll try to get in as many as we can. Okay, I have a few of my own bullet points that I want to cover in case you guys missed them. Just not because you missed it, but maybe it just doesn't come up in the discussion that I may want to just emphasize. So if you don't catch any of mine, I might have time at the end to kind of shotgun right through them. Okay, so who wants to start us off? Okay, hand went up quickly, so this lady right here. And if you want to please stand up. Okay, and remind me your name again.
My name is Becky,
Hi, Becky.
and forgive me if this is juvenile.
No? Oh, by the way, rule number 3, nothing is juvenile. Okay, in other words, just like you were told in school, there are no dumb questions. There are dumb reactions to questions, though, so don't be in that category. Okay? Go ahead.
I just wanted clarification and maybe confirmation. Verse 5, chapter 5, verse 29 and 30. Is that metaphoric or is it literal?
Okay. Rule number 4, and it's not your fault. I would like to go chronologically, but we'll answer your question anyway, okay? Just because there may be something that's important in the flow. So let's try to start with chapter 1 questions or chapter 2 questions working that way, but I'll answer your question first. Okay? It's talking about, and if your right eye causes you to stumble, pluck it out and throw it away, for it's better to, no, this is all metaphorical. It's trying to make a point about what is the problem with the eye. What does the eye do? It sees, and it's the lust of the eyes. Okay? And so when we see things, then we see, and then remember we talked about this in sort of a process. We see, we get a thought, it goes into our hearts, it gets emotions attached to it. Then it ends up in the next part, which says, and if your hand causes you, what do our hands represent? What we do, the works that we do. We work with our hands. Okay, feet represent what? How we walk, right? So it says, look, if what you're doing is the problem, but what you're seeing is, it's better that you stop looking or stop doing that so it doesn't cause you to stumble. But he wants to take it to an extreme and say, better we just cut it off or pluck it out. Now, we're not having that work out that way, okay? Because, as Tevye said, when they said an eye for an eye, he said, good, then we'll all go to see Messiah blind and toothless. He said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, right? Okay, and that was from Fiddler on the Roof, of course. But the point is here is that he says, look, and if your right hand causes you to stumble, then cut it off. In other words, if the things that you want to do cause you to stumble, or the things that you're looking at are causing you to stumble, cut that out of your life. Okay, did that answer your question? Okay. Anybody want to comment on that particular thing that she brought up? Okay, so now let's go to a question that's from chapter 1 or 2. Preferably chapter 1. I don't know if we have questions for chapter 1. But Candace has her hand up, and so does Jonathan. Okay? And we'll go over to this side in a minute. Go ahead, Candace.
Okay, in chapter 1 on the genealogy,
Yes.
I noticed that it's always the father that is called, just like in the Torah, it says Abraham begat Isaac, Isaac begat Jacob, and so on. And yet, in today, when they look at the genealogy, they go by the mother, and is there a reason why they changed that? That's one thing. And so I don't have to ask for the mic again. I just want to make a comment on something in chapter 5.
Go ahead.
Okay. In chapter 5, just one verse, and it's 5:19, and it says, whoever then breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches men so shall be called least in the reign of the heavens. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be great in the reigns of heaven. I thought of you, Rabbi, when I read that today.
I appreciate that.
I really...
Which one, though?
Part B.
Okay,
Part
appreciate
B.
that. Just wanted to be sure.
So I just wanted to thank you for teaching us truth and from that. But on chapter 1, the genealogy,
Okay, good
always
question.
men.
Okay, good question. And again, some of these are just direct questions. I'll just try to answer them, and then if you have a comment or additional thing, you can jump in. So, okay, so and by the way, I didn't give this as a sort of a rule, but just be aware that I don't always have a filter, and they will be like lightning coming right back out at times. Okay, so the genealogy question is a good question. Okay, in the Jewish tradition, and nowadays, if you ask someone if they're Jewish, they'll ask you if your mother was Jewish. Okay, they won't ask you about your father. And the reason that changed is because during the Dark Ages, okay, for a very long time, hundreds of years during the quote-unquote Dark Ages, we have a problem with a lot of countries coming in and raping and pillaging, and other countries then coming in and raping and pillaging. And there's a lot of fighting, a lot of men going off to war, a lot of times where you lived got occupied. And so we didn't always know who the father was, okay? And so because of that, we went by the mother. The mother usually was the one with the baby, okay? And so, you didn't have career women back then, okay? If there was a baby, the mother usually had the baby, okay? Had that baby with them, was raising him and nurturing him. So we knew who the mother was most of the time compared to how often you might not know who the father is, okay? And so that's why they made that switch. It is not a correct switch, okay? That's not a scriptural thing. I mean, you are, by genealogical understanding, what you are based on your father, all right? As far as lineage is not, now DNA-wise, you get it from both, but I'm saying, but lineage is passed down through fathers, okay? All right. Now, there was an opportunity that came up where Moses was addressed about somebody that only had daughters, and how was that lineage going to get continued? And they were given an inheritance now that was a judgment through leadership, through Yahweh, through Moses, through leadership, to make a judgment, okay? So we have that. Anybody want to comment on that? On that particular thing that I just said? Okay, Dawid does, okay. Did you have a comment about that, Amy, or a different comment? Okay, we'll get to you next then. Dawid, go ahead. Actually, Amy, go ahead while waiting for the mic to get to him.
My question was just along lines with that
Okay.
about the father, because in chapter 1, verse 16, even though we know that Joseph wasn't the physical father of Yeshua, we're given his genealogy there. Isn't that Joseph's?
Amen.
And because by adoption, Yeshua was legally considered his son. Is that what that means? Okay.
Okay, and so we consider Yeshua to be of the tribe of Judah, because his father was from Judah. By the way, where was his mother from? Okay, from what we can read in the genealogies, it looks like she was Levite. Okay, and so he didn't get to be Levite through her; he got to be Judah through him, even though he wasn't physically the father of the baby. But lineage-wise, he was considered Judah, okay? And so that's what's very important that we kind of get through. Okay, Dawid, did you have something to say?
Just a minor comment on what you said. In addition to what you said, basically from what I've been able to gather from the Orthodox, yes, you get your nationality from their tradition through the mother, which is erroneous, you're right. But at the same time, they don't discount the father entirely, because from their perspective, on the traditional side in the faith, you get your tribe from your father. So Benjamin, Levi, or Judah.
Excuse me, exactly. Okay, so like years ago, I was under the impression, we were talking about things like being of the Kohanim. Now, I have Kohanim descendancy. I mean, my grandfather was a Kohen on my mother's side, not on my father's side. So that would mean I would not be a Kohen, okay? And so this is how through the Jewish understanding, that would go as well. That would have to be down through the father's side. Okay, next question. Where's the mic? I'll let you guys, between Steve and Dale, kind of figure out who's next and alternate around. Okay, Jonathan, did you have a question on chapter 1 that we missed you? It was answered and all that? Okay, Janice, go ahead. Let's just hand people the mic already on. That'll make it easier.
That's right, the light was on, therefore it was off.
Yep. Well, because the light means it's muted. It's telling you that the mute is on. But.
All right, so mine is more of a curiosity question.
Okay, we don't do those. Next question. No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
All right, in the scriptures version, it's chapter 13, there's brackets.
What version was that?
The one that
The
you
scriptures?
have.
Okay.
Yeah. See if you can
Oh, I'm
find
familiar
that
with that one. Okay, yeah.
Okay, good.
All right.
Because I honestly don't know if it's like this in every version. Chapter 13, there's brackets around Abner.
Chapter 13 or verse 13?
Chapter 1,
Right.
verse 13.
Okay.
There are brackets around Abner, and Abner brought forth. Curiosity, what do the brackets represent or mean?
Good question. By the way, if anybody have a 98 version? Just me. Okay, that's not even in there. Okay, that's in the 2009. Okay, who wants to answer that question? You can take a guess. Okay, bring it up here to Aubrey. Let her take a guess, and then otherwise we'll bring it to Dawid. Let's see. Aubrey's going to take a guess of why Abner comes in there, because when Dawid read Abner, I'm like, wait a second, that's not in mine.
Isn't it because sometimes they'll skip like the father, and instead of it being the actual father of the child, it'll be the grandfather instead, and they refer to the grandfather as the father? Like it actually skips a generation?
Okay, but you'll see that the other ones are all in there. Abner's inserted. Okay, because you have Avihud in there, and then you have Eliakim, but you got Abner snuck in there. So I'm wondering why that would be. So bring that over to Dawid and see if he knows.
Okay, so in the footnotes, in my wife's 2009, it says that the part about Abner was from the Dutelit Hebrew text, and that it's not necessarily in all the texts, that are considered Hebrew, and that's what they're trying to source it from. So that's why they added it in, is because it's from the Untitled text.
Okay. All right. Does somebody else have a comment as to why that's in there? Okay, Rick does. Bring it around to Rick. Hey, can somebody over here raise more hands? Because Steve seems like he's not getting to do anything. Okay, Rick, go ahead. Stand up.
Yeah, my question regarding that was, a lot of times in the Old Testament when they went through genealogies, some sons would not be mentioned, so they'd skip a generation or two because only the son that was mentioned was like a righteous son who followed in the father that's mentioned's footsteps in
Right.
obeying Elohim.
Right.
So could that be the case in this?
Okay, so anybody else want to comment on that? Do you have a different question? Okay. All right. There are some things you need to know about the book of Matthew. Okay? So, and actually part of this has to do with also understanding about your Bible in general. You have a book that has been, I hate to tell you, manhandled. Okay? And that means that there are insertions and deletions and manipulations that have gone on in your book. If you are a King James only, this book is the inspired, perfect word of Yahweh, you are delusional, sorry. Okay? Not your fault, you've been sold that and told that and etc. Your book is not perfect. The original was perfect, but then man translated it from language to language over the centuries and it's no longer perfect. Okay? I mean, how many of you don't use the NIV? Okay, put your hands down. Okay, almost all the hands went up. Some of the cameras will catch that. Okay, how many of you don't use it because it's a lousy translation? You see, people have translated things poorly because they have to make decisions when you change from language to language as to what understanding or meaning of a word or a phrase is. Okay? We talked about this at Passover when we talked about the word dayenu. Dayenu is one word. In English, it comes out to 5 words. It would have been enough. And so translating is not so simple word for word as you'd like to think you can do. And if anybody's ever read an interlinear, reading Hebrew straight through word for word with an English word doesn't usually make sense grammatically or in the way we word a sentence because they don't put their adjectives and pronouns and nouns and everything in the same order we do in English, okay? And so it doesn't read very well if you just read it straight through the way the Hebrew is written. Same thing with the Greek at times, okay? And so let's understand that in your Matthew, the writer of Matthew through the translations is trying to make a really hardline case for Yeshua. And so he's throwing in there, this is to fulfill what was said by this prophet, this was said by that prophet, this was said by that prophet. And a lot of those, by the way, are very challenging to figure out what he was talking about. I'll point those out if we have time. But this is about the verse, 17, where it talks about 14 generations and then 14 generations and then 14 generations. And they actually manipulated the genealogy a little bit to get 14, 14, and 14. Okay? Because the person wanted, in a gematria sort of way, a numbers way, to have 14, 14, and 14. That was kind of what they wanted to do. Okay, you stick Abner in there, you no longer have it that way. Okay, so you have certain things. And then you also have, there was those, and I'm not going to get into this long story, but there was a part that you read in Chronicles and in Kings, etc., that there was those that were cursed and said, there will be no more through your generation, through your line. And so those people have kind of been popped out, okay? So there are some things that have been not necessarily in a bad way manipulated, but there are some things that are not the way that you would normally see them to be, okay? All right? Now, by the way, I would like everybody to turn around and look at my good friend Richard Cortez, who's here from Arizona and just got in. Stand up, Richard. All right, there you go. And now that he's here, he's going to come up here and answer all your questions. Okay, so remember when I went to Arizona to visit a congregation out there? It was Richard's congregation. I hope you all get a chance to meet him. Great guy, love him. So spend some time, get to know Richard. Okay. Now, so hopefully that kind of works with the answer to that question. So it's a good question. So the Diletet tried to put something in there to try to fix some of what they thought were problems. But I don't know. Just let it be what it is. Okay? But the 14, 14, and 14, I think, was the motivator for some of what you see, okay? I don't know what that does gematria-wise to try to make a point, but remember, this is a Jewish audience that's being written to try to make an argument that Yeshua is the Messiah. And so that would have been a significant thing to them. And you have to put yourself in the right person's shoes when you're reading anything in Scripture to know who the audience is so that you can be that audience. Is the audience the Gentiles? Is the audience the Jews? Is the audience the scattered, dispersed Israelites? Who's the audience? All right? Sometimes the audience is just the 12 disciples. And we're going to learn something from seeing what he says to them, but you're not the real audience there. Some of the things he said, like the foot washing, was to them. That doesn't mean you can't do it, but you were not instructed to do it. There are churches out there that believe differently. I understand that. But he told them to do it. He did not create or add to Torah. That would be a problem. Okay? He gave them a tradition they can do and something we can glean from. Okay? So if we don't do it, nothing bad happens, okay? You don't get in trouble for that. If you do it, you might experience something profound. Does that make sense? Okay, so now we had a question over here.
This goes back to the genealogies. You said that Yeshua was...
Bring it right up to your mouth.
You said that Yeshua was Yehudim.
Steve, let him do it.
Yeah. You said that Yeshua is Yehudim through his genealogy. And I had a question that, the Yeshua is our high priest, and the priests go through the Levites. And because he wasn't we're supposed to follow, where I'm going with this.
It only took us 20 minutes to end up in Hebrews. Thank you.
No, if he's Yehuda.
Good question. Okay. Let me go ahead and try and answer that question. Okay, so you can give the mic back to Steve. All right, so basically what he's talking about is that if he's Yehuda, how could he be our high priest? Okay, so obviously you haven't had time to listen to, because you're relatively new with what I do, so many of the teachings. In those teachings, you will find, if you go through the teachings, that we discuss the Melchizedekian priesthood versus the Levitical priesthood. Okay? There are two priesthoods discussed in Scriptures. Most of the time, they were running at the same time. They were functioning at the same time. In the days of Moses, Moses was the high priest of the Melchizedekian. Aaron was the Levitical. Okay? And so what you see happening in the book of Hebrews is an explanation of exactly that question. Because after all, the Jews at the time, the Hebrews at the time, were freaking out that the siege of Jerusalem was going to lead eventually to the destruction of the temple, and they would have no more priests, no more temple. What do we do? And the writer was saying, it's okay, we still have a high priest. And they said, but the law never said we can have a priest from Judah. He said, well, he's not a priest from Levi doing the Levitical things. The Levitical priesthood had two main functions. Judgment, okay, they did judicial things, right? So if you had an issue, you didn't know what to do, you brought it to them. Or, like you had the skin, remember, we did that with the Sara'at, okay? Tazria, Metzorah, right? We were going through those Torah portions. Or it was on your house, it was on your clothes. Different things you had to go show yourself to the priest. Even Yeshua honors this by the leper being told, after he healed him, go show yourself to the priest. Of course, only one did. Okay? But go show yourself to the priest, as is said in the law of Moses, he says. Okay? So Levitical priests did that, the two functions. They did judging and they did temple service. Now, the Melchizedekian priesthood, you see them going through, we go back to the earliest we hear mention of it with Abraham sitting down with Melchizedek, which the Jews have always understood to have been Shem. Okay? And there was always this training that was going on of discipleship through, and you see it going from Noah to Shem to Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, etc. And so the Torah instructors were the Melchizedekian priests. So Yeshua being high priest of the order of Melchizedek, which it says in the book of Hebrews, Melchizedek means it's a combination word of melech, which is king, and tzaddik, which is righteous. Okay? So Yeshua being the high priest of that order, and it's not referred to as a person, it's an order, just a Levitical order. What do you see Yeshua doing? Discipling, instructing in Torah. And then he trains them to be disciples, to actually be really Melchizedekian priests, to go out there and do the same. Essentially, that would be what people in my position would be considered. We would be walking in the order of Melchizedek. We are instructing in Torah. Okay, we're not doing temple service, and we're not doing judgment because we don't have the structure for judgment. We have to be a cohesive nation in the land, etc. So you have the Melchizedekian priesthood functioning now. That's also why it's great to understand that when we're told that we have a future potential to all be a kingdom of priests, it's not talking about Levitical ones. Because anybody from any tribe could potentially be in the order of Melchizedek. Only Levites could be of the Levitical priesthood, and only children of Aaron could be Kohanim, high priests. Okay? That was a restricted group. The Melchizedek is unrestricted. Now, it takes anointing and appointing, which means someone who already has it. How did the people start to get that from Moses? What was on Moses was then shared with the 70. Remember, the Spirit on Moses was shared with them. And what did they immediately start to do? Prophesy. What is prophecy? Most people don't know. Speak the word of Yahweh with authority. It doesn't mean looking in a crystal ball and tea leaves and figuring out the future. Now, sometimes the word of Yahweh is about the future, but that's not the point of prophecy. Speaking the word of Yahweh with authority. Okay, by the way, we had that come up today. Did anybody catch that at the end of chapter 5, I think? No, where is it, 6? 7, there it is. All right, at the end of 7, now this is Yeshua's finished speaking. It came to be when Yeshua had ended these words that the people were astonished at his teaching, for he was teaching them as one possessing authority. By the way, the person that asked the anointed appointed question, they recognized him at that moment as anointed appointed. They said, this guy's not the same as everybody else. And by the way, there was tons of guys out there walking around with their students and teaching. He was not the only guy, looking real weird. Hey, how come he's got a dozen people following him around everywhere? Teachers had students follow them around and teach them. Wherever they went, they would find opportunities to use everyday activities to teach them. So that wasn't a strange thing to see. But he said, this guy, he teaches as one possessing authority, not like those who are in authority, the scribes. So they had an appointment, the scribes. They were in authority. The Pharisees had authority, but they were not anointed the way they saw Yeshua. So you see the combination of anointing and appointing. Appointing, it means you have a position. Some people self-appoint. Okay, you have a position, you have an appointment. But then what you see with Moses is that he then passes on and anoints the next. Yeshua picks and anoints the disciples. He appoints them and anoints them and says, you have now been trained to do. So anointing and appointing should normally come down. There are rare exceptions because somebody has to start the process, right? But then after that, because Moses didn't have anybody pick him, Yahweh picked him. But then he went and gave it to others who then gave it to others. All right? Okay, so hopefully that was a long way of answering the question. Great question, though. So being of Judah, that's the whole point, really, the book of Hebrews, believe it or not, is how can we have a priesthood when the priests are gone, and this guy's from Judah? And they said because there's another priesthood that hasn't been very active for a long time, because with Levi doing most of the work, the Melchizedekians have been silenced mostly and been quietly biding their time through the generations. And then Yeshua comes up and reestablishes that priesthood. Okay? Hopefully that makes some sense. All right, good question. Anybody want to jump in on that particular question? Okay, right behind him. Okay, Kathy?
Thank you.
And then Dale, if you want to bring it back.
Yeah.
There's a gentleman back here with his hand up. We'll bring it to him after her. Go ahead, Kathy.
So.
Bring it right to your mouth.
All right.
Or Steve will help you.
Oh, thanks, Steve. I'm nervous. Okay. So.
Anything that's out there is available for me to use. Just be careful what you do.
So I was listening to but I just want to run one thing by you, and you can say, go do the teaching. So Judah, and being the Lion of Judah, and I know it's a picture, and judge, and the scepter always between their feet. Mm-hmm. And so him being of that, and then the mother, the Levite, and him deferring to the priesthood at the time, he also checks that box, and then he brings in the fathers, Melchizedekian. So he was doing everything legally and everything through the Ruach, so wasn't he mirroring not only the father, Melchizedek, but the Joseph's part in it, and also Miriam's part? Was he checking all three boxes?
Well, the answer is not yet, because the judgment part he wasn't doing, and basically you're quoting, well, you're somewhat incorrectly quoting Genesis 49, which talks about that the scepter would not turn away from Jehudah. That's authority, not necessarily judgment, but authority, and a lawgiver. Those, by lawgiver means a teacher of the law, okay? So the teacher of the law would be, and the authority would be of Judah. And so he comes correctly through that. Now, it doesn't talk about judgment, which is a lot of times comes through Levi, but the judgment also came through the king. Okay, because authority to judge was always the priest or the king. He will still not be coming as a Levitical judge. So he's not checking that box off. He will be coming as king. But everything is being done legally, correctly, okay? And according to as prophesied all the way back to Genesis 49. And obviously you can even go back further than that, okay? But the confusion for the people was we have only understood in context this idea of a Levitical priesthood temple system. Now what? It's all going bye-bye, okay? Because the Romans are about to destroy the whole thing. So now what do we do? Okay? And that's the whole book of Hebrews. So, and again, people who read Hebrews and don't understand the context will miss everything about Hebrews, because you have to know why the book is written so you know what the point is that's trying to be made. See, people will use it in Christianity and say, this is to show you that the law was changed and law was done away with. No, what he's trying to say is that there's a shifting from a focus on Levitical temple law to Melchizedekian law, which doesn't change the Torah parts you do at all. It only has to do with understanding the authority from a priesthood point of view. They had not really experienced the Melchizedekian priesthood in their generations. And so this is now going forward. So when it says by nature there needs to be now a change in the law, it's saying a change in the law of priesthood. Not that the law changed, but we're shifting from the Levitical priesthood. Without a temple, all that law goes bye-bye. There's nothing we can do with it. Right? To a Melchizedekian priesthood, which is all about our halakha, our walk. Did that make sense? Does that now make Hebrews make more sense? That's what changed. So it said by nature, by necessity, there was a change in the law. Not a change in that someone took the law and changed it. It's a shift in which law is active. The Torah part didn't change. It was the same for both. We're only dealing with the priesthood part. And the priesthood part just shifted from which one was now active. They were both always there. So there isn't any new law or doing away with law. One was no longer able to be done, so we now shifted to the full authority of the other. Does it make sense? Had they both tried to run at the same time, it would have caused confusion. There would have been a confusion. Okay. Next.
I have one that
Oh, sure, you got the mic and you think you can ask questions.
Somebody didn't want to appear on camera, so I'm standing in.
All right.
They asked in chapter 1, verse 23, please clarify.
Oh, wait, Steve, put it nearer to your mouth. Boom.
Please,
Okay.
please clarify Alma, A-L-A-M.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm guessing the question in verse 23, it says, see, a maiden shall conceive, and she shall give birth to a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which is translated means El with us. Okay, so that's from Isaiah 7:14. Okay, so the word there being translated, where it says a virgin in some translations or a maiden, the Hebrew is not the usual word for virgin. Okay, just so you know. So I'm not saying that she wasn't. I'm just saying it's not the unique word that would usually be used there. We have going on in Isaiah 7, we have a whole nother big problem here, because this is an important context to understand Hebraic thinking versus linear Greek thinking. Okay, because in Isaiah 7, what we have going on here, anybody want to go there? You have time for this? Nobody has an appointment to get to? Okay. In Isaiah 7, All right? What we have going on context-wise is you have during the reign of King Ahaz, okay? You've got this problem where there are going to be nations coming down to attack him. And he is freaking out. Okay, he's being threatened from the north, he's being threatened from the other side, so he's freaking out and he's panicking and he's talking now to Isaiah. And Isaiah says to him, calm down, okay? Because the king of Judah is panicking. And he says, tell you what, ask Yahweh for a sign that, because Isaiah already told him, don't worry, it's not going to happen. Okay? By the way, if you are submitted under authority and you're submitted under leadership, and that leadership tells you, calm down, relax, it's not going to happen, whatever it is you're worried about, you need to trust that. And you just let go. Okay? And so here it is. He says, it's not going to happen. In verse 7, he said, thus said the Master Yahweh, it is not going to stand, nor shall it take place. You're not going to get attacked and destroyed. So he says to him, ask a sign for yourself from Yahweh. Make deep the request or make it high. It doesn't matter. Ask for anything. Just calm down. And Ahaz goes, I'm not going to ask for anything. I'm not going to test Yahweh. I'm not going to. This guy, you can't win with this guy, right? He's all freaking out. So he doesn't trust it. He says, well, then ask for a sign. He says, well, now I'm going to get in more trouble asking for a sign. He says, so tell you what, I'm going to give you a sign. Okay, the sign is that Yahweh himself says to you, you look, the maiden conceives and gives birth to a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel, okay, which means God is with us. Now, names, again, are very important, okay? Why is Isaac's name Isaac? Because she laughed, so she named him Laughter, right? Okay, so we have names that are significant to teach us about the person or to teach us about why that person exists. Okay, so it's not to tell us that Isaac was going to be a funny guy and Laughter, but that because she laughed, she named him Laughter. Okay? Now, in this case, King Ahaz is freaking out. So there's going to be a baby born named God is with you. Relax. And every time you see him, you're going to realize, okay, God is with us. God is with us. Like a perfect reminder all the time. And by the way, we see this child in chapter 8. So chapter 7 isn't necessarily talking about Matthew chapter 1. So people need to understand that. Because you see Emmanuel actually alive and well in chapter 8. So, what's going on here? What's going on is you have to understand that there are prophecies about something that will happen, and it's a type and shadow of something ultimately that's going to happen. Just like we are all aware of the Exodus, that's why we're doing this Days of Unleavened Bread, the Exodus, but we're also aware that there's the thing known as the greater Exodus, the Exodus that's coming. And so they're types and shadows. We also know that there is the Messiah, but there's also lots of other messiahs. Even a pagan king, ruler, Cyrus, was Mashiach. That's what he's called in the Hebrew in the scriptures. He was referred to as Messiah. Messiah meaning a deliverer. Okay, a deliverer. And he did deliver them. And he was used in that role. But then these all point to, because Moses was a Mashiach, Joseph in a sense was a Mashiach, one who saves and delivers the people. But they're all pointing towards the Mashiach. And even our brothers in Judah who do not accept Yeshua as that one are still looking for one known as the Mashiach, not another a Mashiach. There's been plenty of ones who were a Mashiach, a Messiah. And so here what you have in chapter 7, so when you're reading this in chapter 1 of Matthew, you got to be wondering, okay, first of all, for all those people that freak out, well, you got to call him Jesus because it says that in my English Bible. Well, wait a minute. In chapter 1 it says we got to call him Emmanuel. How many people ever heard him called Emmanuel? Never. Why? Because it wasn't the point. The point is he would be known amongst us as God with us. Did you catch that? And we do refer to him as God with us. But that's just not his actual name. We don't refer to him with that because that's the title or the description, so we know him as God with us. Think of it like a nickname, okay? We understand him as God with us. Because he says, and you will have the son, and you're going to call him Emmanuel. Now remember, we talked about the word name doesn't always mean literally the name. He will be known by his reputation, by his function, by all that he does as God with us. But that won't necessarily be his name. Like his actual, when you call him, you would say that name. Because I don't see any verses ever where anybody walks up and says, hey, Emmanuel, how you doing, whatever. He's never called Emmanuel. So you have to start to recognize that the Bible is not written in straightforward, in some places it is, but in a lot of places not in straightforward, literal, straightforward understanding. Okay? So this is trying to tell you, as this is having to do with Isaiah 7, it's talking about the maiden. Okay? So it's a young woman. Was she a virgin? Whether she was or not, that's not the point. The point is, she didn't have sex with Joseph to have this baby. That's the point. That's the miracle. Okay? And so that's a good question about the Alma. Okay? So it's important that we understand it. Okay, good question. Who's next? Okay, go ahead.
I have the mic.
Oh, that's right. I remembered you had the question that you were asking about
Right.
before.
My question is I see my responsibility as a father to my family to teach my family the law of God.
Yep.
And I see that and you mentioned something about Melchizedek priesthood has to do with Torah instruction. So I see a link there between being a priest to my family to teach them the law and having the Melchizedek priesthood. How would you look at that?
Yeah, I would say that, look, all men in their families have a role of a Melchizedekian priest, a role like. Okay, but we're talking about those then having more authority over other people. So you have a limited Melchizedekian priesthood just in your house. Okay? But you're doing the things that a Melchizedekian priest would do. A Melchizedekian priest would do. That's the important part. But that doesn't make you a Melchizedekian priest in a broader sense. Having authority over more people, to instruct more people, etc. Is that fair? Okay? But it would not be anything Levitical. Because you don't have a temple in your house, and hopefully you're not slaughtering any animals and you're not doing any of that stuff. Okay? Although, believe it or not, there are people in the Messianic Hebrew roots, whatever we call, they're out there calling themselves, who are literally taking lambs before Passover and putting blood on their doors and all this other stuff. That, by the way, was only done, the lamb thing kept being done, but only at the temple. Okay? But the blood and doorpost was only done once. But yet we have uneducated, untaught, remember it says the untaught and the unlearned twist verses to their own destruction, right? With 2 Peter. Okay, this is what we have, the unlearned and the untaught. And they're going around telling everybody, we need to still put blood on our doorposts. Why? They only did it once. It was for that one moment. And nowhere in the Levitical instructions does it tell you, when you do Pesach, does it tell you to put blood on your doorposts. It tells you to deal the lamb, to select it out, hold it for a certain amount of time, examine it, slaughter it, etc. Of course, that's done in the context of the temple. And we don't have that. Okay, next question. Okay, Christine?
Can we go back to the genealogies for a moment?
Absolutely, because I still have a question in genealogies. Nobody matched yet. Go ahead.
So it seems that the genealogy listed in Matthew 1 is different than the one in Luke 3.
Oh, sure, you would go there, wouldn't you? No, they are different.
Is one the father and one the mother?
Most likely.
The one in...
Are we looking for more?
In Luke 3:23, it says, and when Yeshua himself began, he was about 30 years of age, being, as reckoned by law, son of Joseph. And then it proceeds with the genealogy.
Yep. And also they decided Luke to go the other direction. They start with Yeshua and work their way back to Adam.
So I was just wondering, would that one be the genealogy of Joseph, since it specifically says it? And then
because Mary's father would have been Joseph.
Huh?
Miriam's father, as opposed to Joseph, Yeshua's father.
Okay. Gotcha. That answered my question.
And besides which, you do know we're doing Matthew, right? So why are we in Luke? No, I'm kidding. Okay. We did Luke 2 years ago. We'll do it again next year. Don't. Okay. Hold that question for next year. I'm teasing. Okay, no, it's a good question. There are two genealogies. One is Joseph, one is Miriam's. Okay, but remember that the word Joseph in there, you got to realize that that's her father. Okay? That's her father. Okay. Now, more questions on the genealogy? Okay, go ahead. Erica?
I've noticed that it mentions some of the mothers, only some. So Tamar, Rahab, Ruth. No mention of Sarah. I was just wondering if there's any significance with the three women that are named in the genealogy. And then the other question is, it says David the sovereign brought forth Shlomo by Uriah's wife.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the guy that he got killed? Interesting that they mention it here in the genealogy.
Okay, so now we're going to open the floor for that one. So why, and by the way, that is my question that you guys needed to check off. So why is that there? Why they mention only those moms? Okay, hands up. Okay, I know DeWeed had his hand up over here, but we'll go on this side. Start with Amy, and then we'll try to see if we get into Kathy. Why are the moms mentioned only those moms?
This is just a guess.
We're allowed to guess,
Because
especially if you say the words, this is a guess.
those women, like Rahab was a prostitute, and Tamar had to be kind of underhanded, or chose to be underhanded. She didn't have to be. And Ruth was a Moabite, was a Moabitess. But they were all grafted in because of their change of heart and change of status. So that's my...
And you get the smiley face sticker. That is the correct answer. There's no need to mention the other ones because they were all done appropriately. There was no mark on their character or a mark on the relationship. There's nothing negative to bring out. And the reason it's in here is to show you that no matter where you come from, no matter what you've done in the past, where you are at the end is what matters. Okay? That's the reason why we see Ruth in the lineage. Because we know in Matthew 23:3 it says, no Moabite or Ammonite unto the 10th generation shall be in the assembly. It's less than 10 generations, by the way, from when those words are spoken to Ruth. I mean, I'm not saying that that's where you would start counting, but I'm saying it's not even 10 generations after the words are spoken that you get to her. And she's in the lineage. And people will say, who are anti-missionary guys who want to say, hey, well, this proves that whole thing is no good. You got this Moabite in there, so he's not Messiah. No, there's no Moabites in the lineage. But what about Ruth? Well, she's not a Moabite by the time she's in the lineage. What it goes to show you is that Judah sometimes has this obsession with genealogy, with bloodline and birth. And that's a lot of what you see Paul rallying against. He rails against that whole idea that your birth is so important. So when you hear him saying about the circumcision and those of the uncircumcision, he's talking about how you were born, not whether or not you get circumcised. If you were born under the Jewish side of it and you would have been circumcised on the 8th day, you are genealogically, by lineage, in covenant. Now, by behavior, you may be out of covenant, but he's talking about that you were born into this thing. And then there are those who weren't born in that can choose to come in, and Paul tries to make the argument that if either one of them is not doing it, they're both just as out, and if either one does it, they're both just as in. Equally. Okay? And so that's one of the reasons why not only do you see Ruth in here, but you see all the other, sort of sketchy situations like Tamar and Rahab, okay? And you see even the fact that, Solomon comes through the situation with David and Bathsheba, right? And see what happened there. And she even gets more shame, so to speak. He doesn't even mention her, mentions Uriah's wife. Okay, that's sort of her ongoing punishment for her foolishness. Because David did what he did, but she did what she did too. Okay? And so this is what we have going on here, okay? So there's a reason they're in there, not only for us to understand that they're actually being sort of put out there so that, we know, but we're also celebrating that they made changes, that ultimately they came into the right place. And that opens up for us that relief to recognize, as screwed up as we are, we can get in. We can make those choices, make those changes, and get into the lineage, so to speak. Okay, well said. Okay, who's next? Back here, okay, Rob?
All right. In chapter 1.
Is this yours or from the live stream?
This is from me.
Okay.
From in verses 19 and 20, Joseph, it says that him being righteous, would it be accurate to say that he's a Zadik, or is he just somebody that just doing the right thing? And also...
Probably both.
Okay, and then in 20, when he's approached by the messenger, he says, do not be afraid to take Miriam as your wife. Why would Joseph be afraid?
Okay, so here she is. Verse 18, she's found pregnant, right? Verse 19, the important thing is here is to understand what putting away looks like. He said, not wishing to make a show of her. Now, you could read that thinking that that was not part of the deal, but putting away was making a show of her. So it wasn't that he would have just put her away and he would have just chosen to be a jerk and make a show of her or whatever. That is what putting away is. That's not what divorce is. That's what putting away is, which is why we read later on about how putting away is such an ugly thing, and Yahweh doesn't really love that very much. Because you would then make a show of someone and have them be publicly marked, and they would never be able to marry again. You would, but they wouldn't. Okay? So what does it say here? Because he was righteous, and he had faith, and he just didn't know what happened with his wife, and he did not want to make a show of her. He was planning to put her away secretly or quietly, which is not the way putting away was done. And then the messenger came to him and said, hold on, it's okay. All right? By the way, just because the messenger said it was okay didn't mean everybody in the community said, oh, that's nice, we're okay now. This did not go easily for them. Okay? I promise you, this did not go easily for them. Because the way it worked is you would be betrothed. The man would now go and make the house or a home for them. It would take time to do, and then they would get together and consummate the marriage. And she was found pregnant in the interim. They would either feel like she got it from somebody else or feel like he didn't wait. So either way, he was going to be dealing with some public shaming and some issues publicly. Okay? Good point. Okay, who's next? Okay, Candace?
Okay, we're back in the genealogy now, and it's Joseph again. And my question is, Joseph was not the father of Yeshua, but because he was married to Miriam, he was adopted by Joseph. So that made him a Jew. But what really made him a Jew was, from my understanding, it wasn't by birth, but by his keeping the commandments. So my question is, when we come in and we're keeping the commandments, doesn't that make us Jewish according to Scripture?
It would if your logic didn't have that one hiccup in the middle of it. Okay? He was not Jewish because of his choice to keep commandments. He was only Jewish because of the lineage. Keeping commandments made him Israel. Okay?
So that means that, like,
so if you
Ruth,
keep commandments, it makes you Israel.
Israel, not necessarily Jew. So
Okay.
then Ruth and was considered Israel.
Right, but she specifically came in through marrying through Judah.
Okay.
So she specifically came in through Obed, through Judah. Okay? So she came in, through the Jewish aspect of Israel. So she's in the lineage truly as Judah. Okay? Because now, remember, it's Obed who brings forth the son through, and his wife at that time was Ruth, right? So Ruth is now Jewish, married to the Jewish man. Boaz. Obed brings back Boaz, okay? But it's Boaz because he's married to Ruth. Okay? She's now Jewish by marriage. Give her the mic back, because.
Sorry.
And I'm sorry about I looked down at Boaz and Obed. See that? Don't think you have to be in front of the mic and never make a mistake. It's going to happen.
I get asked a lot if I'm Jewish because when I explain because they'll ask me about my faith. They'll say, "Are you Jewish?" And, I always say no, but I wondered if I should say yes. Now I know I shouldn't say, but Israel would be the proper
Right.
answer.
But why do they ask that question?
Because they're asking me about my faith. I says,
No, but why do they ask you if you're Jewish?
because of the way that I explain the faith. They
Right.
wanna
And
know
so
if
in
I'm-
their minds, the only context of Torah observance would be a Jew.
Right. And
Okay? So they don't understand anything beyond that.
Right, because they'll say, "Are you a Christian?" And I'll say, "No, I'm not a Christian, but we're similar in the way that we believe that Messiah came, died, and rose again." I said, and we're common, or similar to Jewish because we keep the feast and that we believe the whole Bible is applicable to us today.
Well, that's good way of saying it. That was fine.
Yeah, and so, they'll say, they'll ask me if I'm Jewish.
Okay.
I always say, no, I'm not Jewish. But I thought, I was thinking about this lineage thing with Joseph and stuff.
Right. He's Judah by birth. Okay. We need to keep going because we're still in chapter 1 and we need to get to other chapters, and we have only about half an hour left to go, less than that. Okay, Adrian.
Yes. Can I move into chapter 4, please?
You can. All right. That's a big leap, but go ahead.
Stating the obvious, it
if we
seems
take
like...
more than 30 minutes, we'll be in chapter 11. Bankrupt. Okay, we'll be out of stuff. Okay, go ahead.
Stating the obvious, when Yeshua is confronted with Hasatan, he obviously knows Scripture, and he answers him by quoting Scripture. Would you agree that this is a very good reason for us to make sure that we're studying Scripture, we get it in our gut, so that we are also prepared to defend when we are tested or asked?
Okay. Really good question. I don't think I've ever addressed it the way I'm going to address it, but I think it's a good question. Okay, look. I don't want us to be all caught up in the spiritualizing that you got out of mainstream or wherever you came from. So the battle against Hasatan is not what you were taught, not the way you were taught it, okay? There is a battle. I'm not saying there isn't, but that's not the way it was taught to you. And in saying that, I want you to understand that what Adrian was talking about is, here there's a direct interaction. You are not going to get that, okay? If you do, talk to me, because you're not going to get that, okay? What you are going to get, though, is the encouraging other voice in your head, encouraging you to do something you shouldn't do. And that's when you need to bring the Scripture up, like we just see Yeshua doing, to remind you why you don't do it. And you tell that other voice, I know it's tempting and I want to do this, but Word says not to, and it says this is what I need to be doing, and then use that to shut down that voice. That voice may not be Hasatan, may be you, because you like it, you want it, etc. But whatever that voice is needs to be shut down, and one of the best ways to shut it down is with Scripture. Okay, so it's a good point, but let's use the example in a much more metaphoric, not so literal way, that literally you're going to be expecting Hasatan to be talking to you, and you're going to hit him back with Scripture. Okay? That's not probably going to happen. But you are going to have the little voice in your head, either yours or his, trying to encourage you to go in a way that you already want to go, but that you shouldn't go. And that's when you can bring the Scripture up that says, no, no, no. There's a word here that says I should not be doing that. Okay, next question. Okay, back here. Nolan, welcome.
Hey, can we jump back to chapter 2?
Yes.
All right.
Apparently we've lost our flow, so we'll go anywhere.
Sorry. In verse 23, it says, "And he came and dwelt in the city called Nazareth to fulfill what was spoken by the prophets. He shall be called a Nazarene." Can we discuss that? Or
Yep.
where it might be?
Okay, so where's that verse? What prophecy says that?
I'm not going to go there.
Where's the prophecy that says he's going to be called a Nazarene? Nope. But no, is there a verse that says he will be called a Nazarene? No. The only place that Nazar anything appears as that is in the Nazarite vow, and it's in Numbers 8. But as Dawid is mentioning, and others are trying to throw out there, there's a references, Zechariah is actually the best one, references to the branch. And he shall be called the branch. Okay, the one called the branch. Now it does talk about, in Isaiah 11, which I did write down, it talks about a rod shall come forth from the stump of Yeshai, a sprout from his roots, and a branch is a netzer. Okay, in Zechariah we have, let me get there real quickly, I'm turning pages. Hold on. In Zechariah 3, because that was one of those verses that made me go, there's a prophecy that doesn't exist, because you cannot find any verse in the way we understand it in English where it says, and he shall be called a Nazarene. Doesn't exist anywhere. But in verse 8 it says, now listen, Yehoshua the high priest, you and your companions who sit before you, for they are men of symbol. For look, I am bringing forth my servant, the branch. The branch. Okay? In 6:12 of the same book, it says, and you shall speak to them, saying, thus said Yahweh of hosts, saying, see the man whose name is the branch. And from his place he shall branch out, and he shall build the Hekel, the temple of Yahweh. Okay, so he is referred to this way, but you don't see that. If you do a search in English to all of your software that you can find, you're never going to find a prophecy about the Nazarene. And that could disturb, the anti-missionaries love to bring that up. Oh, what about in chapter 2 and verse 23, blah, blah, blah. That verse, there's no prophecy about that. And you know what? They're right. But they're wrong. You have to dig a little deeper for these things. And that would take knowing Hebrew. That would take a teacher. These are kind of things. Good question, Nolan. Okay, next question. Okay, Dale? I'm sorry, we got one on this side. Wait, we're going to go to this side now. And we'll get to the one on that side. Go ahead.
My question has to do with when you were speaking of the difference between the Levites and the Melchizedekians.
Oh, we already covered that. Okay, next. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
It brought to mind a question about the prophets. Were they Melchizedekians? And if not, what's the difference between them and a Melchizedekian priest?
Because the prophets were prophets. They weren't priests. The prophet has a different role. Okay? Were the prophets teaching Torah? No, they weren't. They were crying aloud and sparing not, telling to get people to do the Torah.
Okay.
They were not the teachers of the Torah. Okay? So no, the prophets were not Melchizedekian priests. They were prophets. It's another role. The Melchizedekian priest has a role. The prophet has a role. Okay? So the prophets, their role is to say, you already know what you should be doing, and I'm here to warn you what happens when you don't do it. But I'm also here to tell you what happens if you will do it. That's the prophet role. Okay? The Melchizedekian is there to say, this is what you need to do. You agree to obey every word that comes out of Yahweh's mouth. These are those words. Let's get them going. Let's do them. Okay? All right. On this side, back over here.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
It's in regards to, let's see. Yeah, 5:22.
Okay.
Okay, if you say to, but I say to you, whoever is wroth with his brother without a cause shall be liable to judgment, and whoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be liable to the Sanhedrin, but whoever says you fool shall be liable to fire of Gehenna. And my question regarding all that, I was wondering, I might be stretching it a bit, probably am. One of the things, it seems like it deals with judgments. And when it says Raka, it refers to empty head. And I was wondering if that could kind of deal with people that are born in such ways like maybe mongoloid or of lower intelligence or whatever, that when we're making I don't want to say judgments, but we know that their IQ is not the same as normal people, and we get upset with them, and we criticize them. And it could go for other people of color or whatever. making judgments like that, which aren't really true judgments, that then they went to the Sanhedrin because it was not quite the same. You got upset with someone because they didn't do what you wanted them to do, but they couldn't really help themselves. But when you're calling them a fool, it's like taking someone and sticking a knife into them because the words penetrate very deeply and you're actually killing them, and it sticks with that child forever. So I'm just kind of wondering if there's a difference there.
What you said was so powerful and profound, but I completely disagree with it, so I don't know what to say. I just disagree with that's what they're trying to say here, although everything you say is true. You understand what I'm trying to say here? Everything she said is true. I just don't think that's what's going on here. What's going on here is 3 different levels of something, okay? If you get angry, and again, this might be something I've never explained this way before because I haven't really been asked a question in that context here. If you get angry or wroth with your brother, you're liable to take action which will bring on judgment. Okay, he says, look, whoever's wroth with his brother without a cause, you'll be liable to judgment. Now, if you had a cause and you took some action, you may be taking appropriate action and not get judged. But you're opening yourself up to being in judgment if you're angry without a cause, because then what you do doesn't have justification. The second level is raka. Now, raka would be more of a public declaration. Now you're shaming somebody in public. You're trying to embarrass them, and that's going to be brought before the Sanhedrin. Okay, now you are going to be accused of trying to shame someone in public. Then the last one is saying, you fool, now you're liable of the fire of Gehenna because the judgment you have just made, you've now judged the person you're looking at. You're not just angry at him anymore. The first 2 levels, you're just upset by what happened, okay? And the third one, you've come to conclusions. You've judged the person. You're a fool, okay? As opposed to saying you acted foolishly and it's upsetting me, or I think that what you did was foolish, you're now calling the person a fool. So you see the 3 levels of process there? Now, that doesn't go against, everything Sherry said is absolutely true, and we need to understand that that is something we can fall into, and we should not. I just don't think that's what's going on here, per se, okay? Because we have to be careful how we treat people and how we look at especially those that are weak in some area, handicapped in some area, or just different. We're going to talk about that quite a bit with the color code stuff that we do in the afternoon, because we are going to recognize that while our skin colors may not be very relevant, our personality colors cause us all kinds of problems because of the way we behave, the way our style of behavior can be very challenging to other people because of the weaknesses of those characters or the flaws in those personality styles. And every color, every character has its flaws. And those flaws can be really hard for us to deal with and also cause others to be hard to deal with us, okay? And so I think that's more with that. So I like that you brought it up because I don't think I've really explained that section that way before. But think of it on 3 levels. My personally being upset with you, and I don't have a good reason for it, and I may do something I shouldn't do to take an action. My publicly yelling, Raka, so people can hear, like I'm trying to get people to think of you in a certain way. Lashon hara, public shaming. That could get you in trouble with the Sanhedrin. And then lastly, it's not about the Sanhedrin anymore. You're worried about now the fires of Gehenna because you're now stepping in the judgment seat and you don't belong in that seat. Okay? Hopefully that makes some sense for everybody. So good question. Next question on this side. Okay, Amy?
I just need, I think, further explanation for my own understanding. I know that you've explained to us about using, good judgment and being part of a certain situation, but can you give me like a real life example to show like what it looks like to actually judge somebody that in the way that we're not supposed to do?
Okay, this is always really hard for people. Okay, so don't feel bad if you struggle with this. There's a very important difference between judging and judgment, or discernment, okay? So because you're told to do those 2 things, to use judgment and discernment, but you're told not to judge. As a matter of fact, we read that in the verses we read today, where Yeshua says, judge not lest you be judged. And we actually read that in the section. That was part of our readings today. But using judgment. So let me show you what that might look like. I see a group of people over on the side, and I walk over because I don't know what they're doing, and they're people I know, and I figure, let me go see what they're doing. Maybe I want to hang out with them or whatever it is. And then I hear something that they're doing. Maybe they're picking on somebody, or they're saying something that I don't feel comfortable about, or something that a Torah observant person should not be involved in, or whatever it is. I will use judgment to say I probably should turn the other way and not join that group. However, if I now go to you and say, well, you know, those people over there, they think they're in covenant, but they're not, because they were doing this, and I think they're going straight into the fire. And see, now I'm judging them. Instead of saying, I don't know why they're doing it, they're still on their own journey, and so I'm not going to judge them, okay? And some of you may have that problem with people that are still smoking, or they're doing drugs, or they're alcoholics, or whatever it is. Don't judge them, but use judgment not to get involved with it. That's discernment and judgment, okay? The judging is when you now look at them and you've decided they're a loser, they're doomed, they're whatever. You label them, okay? As if you were rendering a judgment. So when the person says, you fool, okay? We do this in more subtle ways, and some people receive things in a more global way. If you came to me and while I'm doing something, you were doing something that was irritating me, I may say to you, stop it, that's annoying. That's different than saying, you're annoying. And by the way, there are people that I've had to deal with where I've said to stop something, and I've actually said that was being annoying, and they thought that I thought they were annoying now. I said, no, that thing you're doing right now is creating an annoyance. I don't think you generally, as your definitive terms, makes that this is who you are now. You're an annoying thing, okay? And that's when we can get into the simple wording makes the difference. Man, you're annoying. No, the thing they were doing was irritating. But now you've judged them and said, you are a fool. You are whatever. You see the difference? Okay? And so there are other issues for just losing your temper and even saying somebody, oh, you're being annoying, okay? There's 3 levels here in this section, right here in the verse that we're reading. Be careful of those 3 possible things. But you want to be really afraid of the third one. Let's not label people. Well, you know that person's a real loser, or that person's just this, or that person's just that. We got to stop that. Okay. Who's next? Okay, Aubrey.
Okay, so, sorry. I have a comment on chapter 5, verse 13, and I made this comment at Sukkot, but
Okay, you get a check mark. That's one of mine. Okay, good.
Okay, so I made this same comment at Sukkot, but I'd like to share for maybe those of you who didn't hear it, or I always wondered, I got really curious about how salt becomes tasteless. And I have a background in chemistry, and so my curiosity got the better of me. And I was wondering, how does salt actually lose its flavor? And with my chemistry background, I was kind of thinking, okay, salts. And salt, actually, the only way for it to lose its flavor is to be either diluted or neutralized by another chemical or add something to it. So if, and Torah talks about, mixing or,
adding to
or taking away.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of, I pieced that together and, that's the only way for salt to lose its flavors, when it's mixed or diluted or, And then I did a little research, and in ancient times when they would actually mine for salt, if the salt was impure, they would dig deeper down, and they found out that the salt that was closest to the bedrock was usually the purest salt. So the salt that was closest to the rock foundation was pure. So I just wanted to share that.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it, Aubrey. Okay, so now my comment on verse 13. Completely different than the area where she was. So I'm not disagreeing, or it has nothing to do with what she said. It's a whole different point. Because we've been doing a teaching called, Are You? And what's connected to covenant? Okay, so why don't we put the word covenant here? You are the covenant of the earth. Ooh. But if the covenant becomes worthless or has no flavor to it, how shall it do its job of bringing the earth, that seasoning, sharing that flavor with the rest of the earth? How shall it be seasoned? For it no longer is of any use but to be thrown out and trodden down by men. Interesting. Okay, and I've never said that before because I had not, without this teaching, really focusing on where, just put the word covenant there. You are the covenant of the earth. You are showing the earth, and by the way, next part, that part 36, we're going to be dealing with how not covenanting basically destroys the earth. Okay? I'm going to read that in Isaiah 24, wherever, I think it's going to be in there. But understand that. You're the covenant of the earth. Not that you are in covenant with the earth, but because of you being in covenant with Yah and you being on the earth, we have a job to do, a task to do, to be that light, to show people what it looks like to be in covenant. Of course, if you don't do exactly the way he does, and you show the covenant to be any number of different variations of what covenant could look like, the way people choose to do it, now it's lost its flavor. It's lost its ability to season correctly. All right? And so I think that was a really good one. So I'm glad you brought up verse 13. Okay, next question. This side. Go ahead, Steve. Okay, Christina?
Hi. Is this loud enough?
Yep.
Okay. So in chapter 8, when the disciples were being called, one thing that really struck me, this isn't a question, it's more of a comment, an observation, is that, and it really relates to me because I've gone through this recently, and I've gone through it a lot in my life, but particularly recently, he calls the disciples, they answer it and say, okay, I'm going to go. And then suddenly something really horrible happens and they're about to die. And what really is poignant to me is that sometimes we step out in faith that Yahweh he's calling us and telling us to do something, and then just everything seems to go wrong. Mm-hmm. And over my lifetime, that's happened so many times. In fact, recently when I decided to move down to the Chattanooga area, to be able to go to MTOI, that's exactly what happened. But then again, it's very encouraging to read that even though things can go so wrong, that he does calm that storm.
Amen. Amen. Okay, I want to go into that a little bit, and we are running out of time, so we're going to have to see what we can get done real quickly here. But I want to just hit something really important on this. Can we see that it's now almost 12:20? We've got to get a few more things done before we close for lunch. How cool would it be to just do this all day? Right? And there probably are some of you, the first time you saw the schedule, if the first time you ever came out thinking, we're going to read Scripture for 2.5 hours in the morning? Well, this is the best stuff. And didn't I promise you this would be the best part? And we got 4 more days of this. And we're doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. So we got 4 more days of this as we go through, 7, 8, 10 chapters a day of Matthew. Okay, so we're going to really be doing it. Now, I just want us to bring us back to something that I pointed out for the first time. I never pointed it out this way before. I think it was at Rosh Kodesh, but I was talking about you being the boat. Anybody remember that? Was that Rosh Kodesh when I talked about that? I can't remember. It was recently. Okay, so let's go to the verses in chapter 8. He says, and when he entered into the boat, so Yeshua is entering into you, and see, a great gale arose in the sea, so that the boat was covered by waves, but he was sleeping. Okay, so you're being buffeted. There's noise and there's wind and the water's coming over the boat, and this is your life. And Yeshua's in you. And so then you start crying out, Master, save us. We're dying. Save me, save me. And he looks at you like, why are you afraid? Oh, you have little emunah, little faith, little trust. Then having risen, he rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. Now, the problem for you is that he doesn't do that as quickly in your life. Okay? But it's there for such a great dramatic point. And I don't think I'd ever said it before. I said it that one time, and I really like that picture. I like the picture of you being the boat. And he's in you, and then we act that way. And he wonders, where's your faith? Where's your trust? Where's your belief? It's a really important thing there. Okay, I want to hit a couple of things. I know a lot of people have a lot more comments and questions. We really don't have time. We only have about 5 minutes, and then we have to get over to the other building. So we didn't get any from the live stream, did we? Okay. They were good. Rabbi Tom, did you need to say something real quick?
Yeah, if I may, I just wanted to say that When Joanne and I first came into this ministry, we attended Sukkot in Sevierville at Mountain Lake Ranch, and I heard there was going to be some readings of the Torah. We're reading the book of Deuteronomy, and I thought, oh boy, that's really exciting. You know, we'll read the book instead of hearing a sermon. And I didn't really think much of it. But I just want to say that I have been Torah pursuant, not necessarily observant, but pursuant since 1972. And when we got into these Torah readings, and I heard the people's questions and the comments, I realized how much I had been missing just by studying myself. So when we study together as a group like this, you know, we can glean so much out of it. And that really excited me about these readings.
Amen.
And I look
Amen.
forward to them.
Awesome. Great job. You know, you could be at a place where they're going to run, you know, a different speaker up every 30, 40 minutes or in every hour, and you have 47 speakers and all this other stuff. And I've had people say to me when they don't know our ministry and they happen to find us because we're physically convenient, hey, well, we live in this area and we heard you doing something in North Carolina, whatever it is. And so I'll say, well, first thing I'll say is, they'll ask me, well, who are your speakers? Me. They're like, oh, okay. I said, are you familiar with anything I teach? No. I said, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you go listen to some of that first, and then let me know if you still want to come. Well, why? I'm different. How? You'll have to go listen. And, you know, most of them don't call back. I said, look, we'd love for you to come. I just want you to know what you're coming to. You're going to get 10 days of me, okay? Mostly. And so you should know what it is that you're getting and if that's something that you want. But that's the whole thing, is that we don't just run up. I mean, I could invite people here. I can bring Rico in. He's a friend of mine or whatever. But it's about what we're trying to get done during this event, not about just bringing in a bunch of people like to put on a show for you, okay? Not that Rico's a show. Rico does some great teaching. What I'm just saying is, you know, I'd rather sit here every day for 3 hours and read the word and talk about it than just keep running teachings up here in front of you, okay? And this way we get like a dozen or to 30 to 50 to 100 mini teachings, okay? And so, and by the way, when I go to places as a guest speaker, that's mostly what I do. I don't go up there and do a teaching. I take questions for 3 or 4 hours. I don't know. How long were we there, Richard? Hours. He's like, hours. That guy would never stop. Hey, and nobody fell out of a windowsill, so we're okay. I tell them that before we start. Nobody sit in a windowsill, we're good. Okay. We're on the first floor. No, we're not doing any raising of the dead. Okay. So one last thing I want to say before we close. We've got only about a few minutes here, and then we'll have someone close us in prayer. Okay? There is a section in chapter 7 I just want to point out. Actually, I'll do 2 things real quick. In chapter 6, very important, do not miss, and I've said this a lot in the forgiveness teaching, do not miss in verse 15 that if you do not forgive, he will not forgive you. Stop getting hung up on whether or not they apologized. Stop getting hung up on whether or not they came to you or whatever. And by the way, you don't have to even go and tell them, I forgive you. You may not get the opportunity. But you have to, in your being, forgive. You have to release that ugly pain that's causing you all that emotional angst. And forgive the person. That doesn't mean that you forget. It doesn't mean just allow it to keep happening, but you have to release it. And there's a lot more to that, but just recognize that you are in trouble in your your vertical life because you want forgiveness, but you won't forgive, so you're not getting it. Okay, chapter 7, and this is where I'm going to just wrap up with something in chapter 7. Manny brought this up as far as where he said, I don't know how you guys want to go deeper when you're still, it's hard enough to work on the basics. And here's the most basic of all. He says, do not judge lest you be judged, for with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged, and with the same measure, it'll be measured to you. And this is it. Why do you look at the splinter in your brother's eye, but not notice a plank in your own? And you guys all know this whole thing. He calls you a hypocrite. Work on you and stop being so focused on everybody else. Because I don't know about you personally, but a lot of you suffer from the talking about other people disease. And you spend most of your time talking about other people and things that you're whining and complaining about. And you got to stop that. It's hurting you and others. Work on you. And if you're working on you, you'll recognize, wow, whatever that person's going through, I got my own stuff just as bad or worse. I really shouldn't be judging them. There's your basics. That's what Manny was talking about from some of the things we were already reading. He said, well, if I haven't figured out chapter 5, that's what you were talking about. Well, here's one in chapter 7. None of you've got that whole plank and twig thing worked out. That should keep you plenty busy. So when you come to me and ask me to go deeper, I said, how are you doing with your twig and your plank? Figure that out first. Come back to me later. We had a lady in the congregation once, and I couldn't really tell from where I was standing at the podium. She walked in a little bit later. She was sitting about halfway back, and she had this sort of glowing neon green something like a headband or something. I couldn't tell if she had an eye patch or whatever it was. No, I walked up to her later. She had a tent peg under a rubber strap in front of her eye. She said, this is so I could figure that chapter 7 thing out. She literally took like a tent peg and took like a rubber headband and put it through that so that it was laying flat, against her face. And we all got to watch that. She walked around with it all day. It was great. It was really great. Probably uncomfortable, but great. I can't think about rubber strapping a wooden thing against my face all day, but But anyway, I just want to encourage us, you have more than enough to do without needing to go into the quote-unquote deeper things. Okay? Work on those basic stuff. It will you'll believe me, you have plenty to play with there. Plenty of stuff to work on. Problem is, none of that stuff's fun or interesting. It's all exciting and titillating and stimulating to go look at the new stuff. I want to go to that new doctrinal understanding crack. Give me a fix. Stop being addicted. If you need a fix to that stuff, go somewhere else where they have conferences and nothing but tables in their marketplace selling new doctrinal understanding crack. Okay? And you can go buy it for any price you want. They've got it all over the place. It's even for free in a lot of places, online or whatever. But stop that. You got so much important basics to work on that will help you become Yeshua-like. Always ask yourself the question, is this enticing little thing that I want to go study actually helping me become like Yeshua? The plank and the twig thing will. All the stuff in chapter 5 and the Beatitudes will. Some of that stuff, all that stuff in the model prayer will. How about the other stuff at the end of chapter 6 when it says, look, all of these things that the Gentiles seek for, I worried about what I'm going to eat and my clothing and my this and my that. And he says, knock that off. He says, seek first the kingdom and its righteousness. In other words, work on the plank and the twig and the Torah and all that stuff. And everything else will be added to you. Seek first the kingdom in a Christian way meant, seeking some sort of, something like that. No. It says, and its righteousness. In other words, seek the Torah observant life. Become Yeshua-like. And all that other stuff will be taken care of. By the way, that's Torah. Isn't that what he says in the blessings and the cursings? If you do what I say, all that other stuff will be taken care of. Do you believe him or not? Okay, let's go ahead and close in prayer. Who wants to close this? Raise a hand. We'll take a volunteer. Where's the mic? All right, David had his hand up real fast. Let him close this in prayer.
Yahweh El Israel, I ask you and I thank you for everything that you've brought us through and everything you've taught us through this teaching session. And I ask that you would help us to remember it and apply it properly with wisdom and understanding in our lives. And I ask you to go with us forward. And thank you that you will go with us forth from here. And I ask that you would help us to have a good, nourishing meal from here. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Okay, so that's going to be it for the study here. Just a reminder before you guys get up, there's on the table here for those who have not taken the color code test, Go up and grab this. There's 5 pages. They're in 5 piles. Grab one from each pile. Do that test during lunch. You need to come here this afternoon already having it filled out. Okay? Please only take it if you've not done the test. If there's extras, you can take it if you want to take it again. But let the people who have not done it take it first.